Okay, here's part 3 of our analysis of Rashad Richey's dissertation. In the previous installment, we didn't find a lot. It wasn't terrible until we got to the end when he totally fabricated a citation out of thin air. I got mad and quit. And so I'm going to now pick up where we left off on Dr. Rashad Richey's dissertation. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnny Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnny Walker Dread Show.
All right, here we go. The ability to afford tuition, family life, work-to-school balance, and campus culture. The ability to afford campus culture. Interplay in the overall underlying forces of retention, academic performance, and ultimately graduation and completion rates of the non-traditional student. A lot has been written about that, by the way. There's no citations listed here whatsoever. Then he says, research data informs us that 65% of black college students must balance full-time jobs along with family responsibilities. So let's see here. He cites Bridges 2020. And when we come down here, it's a article on the United Negro College Fund website. It's not a research article. And so here it is. Again, it's just an online article. It's not peer-reviewed. And the person who wrote this is not responsible for the actual data. It is unknown as to what extent America's College Promise Act of 2018 would have on underserved communities. No, it's would have had on. It never passed. Let it go. It's over. And we'll skip down a little bit more. Hence, this paper analyzes this act through the research lens of its potential impact. And I think what he means simply is by taking into account its potential impact. Through the research lens, I have no idea what that means, but I think that's what he's talking about. On a non-traditional black college student in U.S. higher education and their future potential ability to enter the middle class. Again, that's subject-verb agreement. I hate it. The purpose of this research was to examine an existing U.S. Senate bill, America's College Promise Act of 2018. We know, you keep saying it over and over again. I realize your dissertation was a little thin and it was coming out a little bit short, but repeating the stock phrase over and over, it's kind of bullshit, man. I'm tired of it. It is critical to understand if underlying political agendas halted the enacting of this law. Of course they did. Any bill that stopped in Congress is stopped because of political agendas. Although a political agenda is typically what you label your opponents' political views. They have an agenda. Well, yeah, what about yours? Oh, that's not an agenda. Well, if you're trying to pass a law to prevent a pipeline from being built, you have an agenda. You have an economic or ecological agenda. And the other side has an agenda too, maybe cheaper oil or whatever. Everything is an agenda. So when he talks about political agendas here, he's talking about political opposition from Republicans. He doesn't consider those who try to pass this bill as having a political agenda, but they obviously did. Through a proper analysis, the researcher aimed to acquire clarity regarding, in other words, to understand, the direct impact this bill could have on higher education, could have had on higher education, insight into the economic marketplace, and the potential benefits to black non-traditional students. Finally, this research sought to better understand the political processes in federal higher education policy as a whole. In other words, to understand why Republicans don't want to fund higher education. That's what he wants to say. President Obama's administration desired higher education to become a standard. Okay, I have a real issue with this. I don't want the bachelor's degree to be a standard, because essentially the only way for that to happen is to lower the rigor so low that everybody can get one. I mean, there was a time in this country when having a high school diploma was a big deal. But now everybody's got one. And you can see what's happened to the rigor in high school. Well, the same thing is going to happen in college if we try to maneuver everything to where everybody can get into college and get a degree. And by the way, there's no citation for that claim, and I'm not sure that President Obama actually said that. Gee, it would be good to be able to look up the source to find out for sure, wouldn't it? Further, President Obama understood the need for higher education largely because the percentage of occupations requiring post-secondary education continued to rise. I'd like to see a citation for that. There's a lot of claims in here he never bothers to justify. Okay, we'll skip down. The entire idea of community colleges is to offer a reliable and affordable route to entrance into four-year universities. No, that is not true, and therefore I would love to see a citation for that. The entire idea of community colleges is for students to be able to get a four-year degree down the road? Really? I thought that community colleges were about learning skills that were marketable that you could go get a job. Now, a lot of people do go to community colleges to get their general ed out of the way and go on to get four-year degrees, but that was not the idea of a community college. And in fact, the first junior college, which I think was Fullerton State down in LA area, was to create skilled agricultural workers, people like that worked in factories and stuff, the citrus growers especially. It was not designed as a pathway to a four-year degree. I think that the community college system would be very upset to think that people think that their purpose is to just shoehorn people onto a four-year degree.
Dummy.
Again, without a citation, he can make these claims and nobody can call him on it. Except me. Research, questions, and hypotheses. Now you may be wondering, well, wait a minute. This is not a quantitative study, it's qualitative. Why do we have hypotheses? Well, that's because all of the qualitative researchers out there got tired of getting snubbed. Basically, people were saying quantitative is better than qualitative. And so the qualitative people got together and thought, how could we make our work more scientific? And so they came up with the idea of research questions and hypotheses that you pose in a qualitative study as well. And he's got them here. Yeah, we'll read them. Here we go. Given the research problem and purpose of this study, the scope was designed to analyze and better understand the potential policy impact the American College Promise Act of 2018 would have on non-traditional black college students. We know. You keep saying that. We get it. And their ability to enter middle-class America. Yeah. Again, he's just padding his dissertation to make it look longer. This reality must be examined through an unbiased, non-political perspective. Oh, let that one soak in. He's saying that the only way for us to understand what caused the failure of the College Promise Act, or whatever the hell it is to look at this through an unbiased, non-political lens. And who better to do that than Rashad Richey, the man with no political axe to grind?
That's more like, zany or goofy. Yeah. It's the wrong kind of loco.
Totally unbiased. We've seen that so far, right? I mean, I'm surprised a lightning bolt didn't come from the sky and strike him down when he typed this out. Of all the people, to write a dissertation that's unbiased and non-political, Rashad Richey is the last person you would choose.
Okay, that was weird.
All right, with this in mind, it is important for the study to delve into the following research questions, and they're a hoot. Here we go. What were the motivating factors for the America's College Promise Act of 2018 to be introduced? Go read the act. It'll tell you. And you've already been describing it. All that you've been describing so far has been the motivating factor for why this thing was introduced in the first place. So why are you setting this thing up as a research question? You've already answered it. As part of the research question, he says, it is believed policymakers desire to bring equality in higher education with the ultimate goal. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. The research question is not to be phrased in terms of it is believed that. The hypothesis is supposed to be a strong statement that you either affirm or refute. Or you could say provide evidence to substantiate or deny, or however you want to phrase it. But you don't write a hypothesis like, I think that, I believe that. Research question 2. What are the potential policy implications of the America's Colleges Promise Act of 2018? Okay, let's go down to the hypothesis. Therefore, if the ACP Act of 2018 were to be granted by the U.S. government, you don't grant acts, you pass them, okay? It would need specific regulations to monitoring the progress of participating students and supporting them cha-ching, cha-ching, through graduation, then obtaining employment in the middle class. In other words, we need to monitor the success of the act, and if it's not working, we need to dump more money into it. That's what he means by supporting them. Financial. That's what the act is all about. What are the political dynamics involved which provide clarity as to the reason the America's College Promise Act of 2018 never received a full floor vote? And I wrote down here, in other words, what political dynamics caused the act to fail? Isn't that much clearer and shorter, more concise? And the hypothesis 3, since the ACP concept was founded by President Barack Obama, it is likely the Republican Party put a stop. Well, you don't write a hypothesis in terms of likely, but okay. It is likely the Republican Party put a stop to the passing of the bill based on an unrelated political agenda. Oh, okay. In other words, Republicans killed the bill because they didn't like Obama. It says here, since the ACP concept was founded by Obama, so he's basically saying that. Examination of each of these questions gives way to plausible, reliable, and valid information regarding the ACP. Be very careful about using the words reliable and valid. Those have very specific meanings in scientific research. They require testing, and he's not using these terms correctly. Unlike previous literature on the topic, I would certainly love to see some citations. Unlike previous literature? Well, okay, what is it? What is the literature? This study allowed for cross-comparison of information. I have no idea what he means by that. Along with direct source responses surveys, leading to a conclusion regarding the effectiveness of the act if it were to be enacted and the primary factors that contributed to its defeat. By the way, I should go back and say direct source responses is a fancy way of saying interviews. Okay, take a look at this. This is how you pad a dissertation. Given the reality that higher education is designed to be a conduit to middle-class America, it is paramount to understand potentially sweeping higher education policy through its ability to catapult non-traditional adult learners to a middle-class reality. And then he says, in simpler terms, well, why didn't you use the simpler terms in the first place? Let us read it. Understanding how underserved populations can be propelled into the middle class through educational means and its subsequent effect on the U.S. economy emphasizes the need to review higher education policy, including its ability to better the future of Black Americans and the education system as a whole. He basically just restated the first sentence over again. Okay, we'll skip ahead here. This study is particularly significant in its intentions to discover if political interests halt the equity of higher education access. Of course they do. Okay, so here's another way to pad a dissertation. You write a summary of everything you've been saying, so you just get to restate it yet again. Generally speaking, this chapter provided an overview of the topic at hand. Okay, described the concept of policy conflict and highlighted the needed reform in higher education. Oh my God, we're just going to go back through the same points that he made already. And I have some things I wanted to say about some of this, but enough. Oh, here we go. This is the unbiased, non-political Rashad Richey at work here. While some naysayers have noted the high number of students who dropped out of collegiate programs after returning due to family or work obligations, the act appears to offer a promising pathway for Black students to better themselves and control their own distinction towards a better future, as well as a more productive role within their communities. So think about what he's saying here. Yes, we have had these kind of bills before, and yes, they haven't always worked, but the people who criticize those are naysayers. Why can't they understand what the greatness of this act is in offering a promising pathway for Black students? I mean, this is about as biased as they come, and it comes right after he told everybody that you need to examine this in a non-political, non-biased way.
Third field. Yeah, I'm crazy. I'm the loco one.
Okay, so now we're going to get to the good one. President Obama introduced the act on the grounds that the U.S. workforce was showing an increasing gap in skills versus employment. In other words, prospective employees did not have the education and skills needed to be hired most positions. And he's got a little bit of a grammar issue, but fine. Ultimately, the act presented an opportunity for more than 5 million students to graduate from higher education institutions by the end of the 2020 fiscal year. And that's a little bit of a stretch, okay? But let's not worry about that. Notice the reference, Jansen, 2018. So let's take a look at it. Get ready. And the title is America's College Promise, Examining Congressional Standstill from a Federal and Local Perspective. Wait, other than the local part, this sounds like the dissertation we've been reading. And that's what gave me the first inclination that, we may have plagiarism involved here. So let's go ahead and look down a little bit. The abstract is very telling. It begins in 2015, Obama introduced the Americans College Promise Act. Okay. With this federal proposal, Obama made an effort to make college as universal as high school. Okay. Why did Congress not support the initiative? I examined the responses from the federal government and local stakeholders to find out what caused the current stagnation. The thesis concludes that while partisanship seems to limit the chances for the ACP to succeed on a federal level, party consensus is present on a local level. Hence, it is not merely a matter of party preference or institutional scope. Rather, the federal discussion and legislation on the ACP came to stop because of complex dynamics in both the institutional and ideological coordinate system. I'm not sure what she means by coordinate system, but this is essentially Rashad Richey's dissertation. Just reading part of this. The ACP Act is not making its way through Congress. So this was written as the act was trying to get passed. And the reasons for this have not yet been explored on the academic domain. So the research here is about what? Why is the bill facing such political hostility? Exactly what Rashad Richey's dissertation's about. So far, the initiative's failure has only been assessed in informal ways. This thesis will consist of a conceptualization of the program, and I will collect different arguments, federal versus local, that goes on. These arguments may reveal patterns or recurring themes which show the differences between federal and local approaches, and I will examine whether or not these differences contribute to congressional standstill. Further, an important theme may be responsible for an unsolved problem, the discrepancy between Republican and Democratic views on education policy. So she's going through all of what he's going through, except she actually examined the local level impact on the bill, and Rashad Richey did not. So, does Rashad Richey lean on this document very often? Oh, yeah. Okay, so here's the first citation of Jansen, and we can find out how often this name comes up. 1, 2, 3, and it says over there, one of 18. Now, the 18th one is the bibliography entry. So he has cited her work 17 times from this point forward. Keep in mind, everything that we've done before has only just been exploratory. He's not getting into the research. So the remaining, 52 pages or whatever, he has cited her 17 times. And huge swaths of the dissertation is devoted to just simply restating what she had in her article. Now you might think, well, okay, that's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. It looks to me like he's pretty much borrowed this other work and recast it in his own language. And he added on these interviews of these senators, but that's, other than that, it's pretty much the same. What is the quality of this other work by Jansen? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so you may be thinking, well, this is probably a research article that's been published in a major refereed scholarly journal. No. Okay, what about a conference proceeding? This was presented at a conference, and a conference proceeding is pretty reasonable for citing. No. Okay, how about a chapter of a book? Or maybe a book. A book is not a primary source of information, but people cite books all the time. You know, it's not a major deal. No. And I know what you're thinking. Okay, well, it's got to be like maybe a PhD thesis. A PhD thesis isn't too bad. It's not published in a scholarly journal, but it's refereed by advisors, right? Yeah, it's not a PhD thesis either. Okay, it's a master's thesis. It's got to be. It's a master's thesis, and yeah, you would not want to cite a master's thesis very often because, you know, the rules are a lot laxer, and the student is not a really highly trained researcher yet. No. Are you ready? It's a bachelor's thesis. That's right. A bachelor's thesis. This is a capstone project.
Hi, I'm the most local person in here.
In other words, Rashad Richey came across a capstone project and, for the most part, ripped it off. He's redoing everything that Lika Jansen has done. There's hardly any difference between this work and his own. A bachelor's thesis. 17 times. Take a look. To satisfy the act, legislators must carefully address any problems, blah, blah, blah. Jansen. And I've colored purple throughout this entire deal with Jansen, and you could take a look. Jansen, 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 Jansen. This is unreal. I have never seen anything like this. To take a bachelor's thesis and rely on it as a primary source of information and lean on it 17 times throughout a dissertation is bonkers. All I can say. In the follow-up, I'm going to go ahead and just skip on down to the very end where I'm going to look at some of the grammar, which is absolutely atrocious. Up till now, he's only made mistakes in like every third or fourth line. Towards the end, he loses control, and it's going to be almost undecipherable. Like my videos, subscribe to my channel.